Truth be told, in a series where you are outscored 16-3, you're probably fortunate that you even came away winning one of these games. What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome in to the Seattle Mariners post-game recap. The Mariners get blown out this afternoon, 10-2 to the Milwaukee Brewers. They fall to 54-48 on the season. I think they'll at least remain tied for a playoff spot. Tampa's tied with Chicago right now. Boston's beating Philly. We'll see how that plays out as we go along. As always, before I go any further, like the video, even during the losses. Remember, you're not liking the Mariners. You're liking me, helping me out, hopefully. Comment your thoughts on the team and the game down below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are new or lurking to the channel. I'll get this right away off the bat, because I know some people don't like it. I was at work today. I did not watch this game. I'm not going to go back and watch this game because it looked brutal. Did listen to it, went back and did watch the highlights and stuff. So I shouldn't say I didn't watch any of it. So if that's something that bothers you, I totally get it. A lot of my recaps are very anecdotal anyways. My goal is always to be more of a voice for the fans. There's certainly other people that can give you better baseball breakdowns in terms of, hey, that slider needs to bite more, things like that. My goal is always to try and be a pulse of the fan base after each game, and be, like I said, Mariners therapy in a sense. So, let's start with the good news. There's no good news today as the Mariners are crushed, but they just played 12 games against all playoff teams, all first place teams, minus the Yankees, who could very easily be a first place team in a couple months here. They played the Yankees, Tigers, Astros, and Brewers, and they went 6-6. That's fine. That's a tough stretch of baseball. It's a stretch where teams could easily go 3-9, 2-10, and a season can get derailed very quickly. Mariners didn't allow it to happen. I'm a broken record. I say this a lot if you've watched all my videos, but if someone would have come to me before the 12 games and said, Jay, 6-6, do you take it? I'd sign the dotted line. Certainly you'd love to do better. They had a chance to go 7-5. They could have won that third Yankees game. They could have won that third Astros game. They didn't really couldn't have won today. They're kind of, blown out. It wasn't there for them to win, but, win today and they could have been 8-4. I'm not saying these losses can't come back and haunt you. They can, but I would have taken the 6-6 because it definitely could have been a lot worse. And if you can do damage here on a road trip against an Angels team that is certainly not bad by any means, but I think it's a team the Mariners should beat. They've had trouble in Anaheim recently. And then the A's, a team that the Mariners are better than. Again, a pesky team, so there's no guarantees here. But if you can go take care of business against teams like that, the 6-6 here is okay. Where it becomes a problem is if you go to Anaheim, lose 3 out of 4, and then you lose 2 out of 3 to the A's, and you go 2-5 in that stretch. That's when it becomes an issue here of not finishing some of these games. But the Mariners can take care of business where they're supposed to. This is okay. Now, the game today was pathetic, right? It seemed like a lackluster effort. J.P. Crawford had one of the worst games I've seen from him. Certainly didn't do anything with the bat, and defensively made the error that led to sort of the game getting opened up there in the fourth inning. And there were some other plays, too, where it looked like he maybe could have made and did not make. I think JP's got to get a day off here. It seems like it's been a while since he's had one. They got Cal a day off. That's fine. He needs it, right? It's good. And the Mariners are in, and again, I've said it, they're in another 17 game and 17-day stretch, which to me is kind of ridiculous that they've had 2 of these here. I know they had the All-Star break and everything, but I just don't remember that happening more than once in a season, and especially, in a way, twice in a month for a baseball team. So I would get JP a day off here. That was poor performance, and it's kind of compounded a little bit. Remember, 2 plays that, listen, the Mariners in these 2 games I'm going to talk about were outscored 21-5. So I don't want to act like one error in each game is the end-all, be-all. But if JP makes that catch on Sunday off the bat of Whitcomb, and if he makes that play today, I do wonder what ends up happening in these games a little bit. I will go to the grave saying I think they win on Sunday if JP makes that play. This one, I don't know. Like, it still would have just been 2-2, but I think Castillo gets out of that inning. Looked like he was maybe settling in a little bit, and he maybe gets through 5 or 6 innings, 2-2. Then you use your leverage arms, and you maybe win this game. Who knows? Could have still been a blowout. Everything Milwaukee put in play was finding a hole today. I mean, every ground ball got through. Again, and Milwaukee, and for the Mariners, it didn't happen. Milwaukee's a good defensive team. Like I said, great run prevention unit. They're going to get you. They're a good baseball team. So, no excuses. And Castillo still got to bounce back too, right? I don't think Castillo was necessarily as bad as the line score looked. But one error can't derail an inning either. I think the one Sunday was a little bit worse because it literally scored a run and kept runners on base. Today's was an error with one out. You can bounce back from that. So I feel like when plays like that happens, a lot of people want to just put the blame on one entity. Like, well, those runs wouldn't have scored if JP didn't make the error, which possibly, and I think very likely true. But Castillo can get the outs still as well. It's not the first time a pitcher's had an error happen behind them. Castillo's still got to dig down, and he's got to be better. Gave up 10 hits today. Again, I think some of it was a lot of ground balls finding holes against them. Even the double in that second inning, the first one puts runners at second and third, was hit at like 80 miles an hour. So I do think there was some BABIP luck for Castillo today. But he's got to get through that and find a way to get out of that inning as well. Just really, this one again, poor performance all around. Don't love the fact that there's been a few blowout losses here. In the last 4 games, the Mariners have now been outscored by, 8, 14, 13, 21 runs over their last 4 games. Not a great sign. And like I said, when you have a series where you're outscored 16-3, I say it all the time, sometimes the Mariners get unlucky, right? We've had series where they've outscored teams and lost the series. And I've pointed out that's a little unfortunate, but it goes both ways. When you're outscored 16-3, you're very fortunate that you came away with a win there. So, don't want to imply that like we should be happy they won, but in the context of how they played, if that makes sense, right? Like we shouldn't be happy with one win, but the way they played, you should be happy that they came away with at least one win here. Probably caught the Brewers at a wrong time, but no excuses. You got to figure it out, right? I mean, the team in front of you in the AL West is dealing with 15 people on the IL, and they just swept Arizona today. The Mariners are relatively healthy. They've got to find a way, and the pitching again is got to find themselves a little bit. It is what to me is ultimately holding this team back this year. This was not a good offensive performance, not a very good offensive series. Didn't expect it to be against Milwaukee. You need to score more than 3 runs in 3 games. We'll be very clear about that. But, and the defense has got to be better too, like we talked about with JP and the errors. And then the throw by Canzone there that I saw, it looked like Garver might have had a chance at that tag. That's something the Mariners have struggled with. So defense, run prevention in general has got to be better for this team. They have the talent to do it. They have the pitching staff to do it. I would think that over the final, I don't know where we're at here, 60 games or so, that I expect the pitch to be better. We saw a good sign last night with Logan Gilbert. And Castillo has been good this year. I'm not really picking on, it's not trying to pick on Castillo, but just in general, right? There's too many games like this from the team as a whole where, I think compared to last year, they've lost way more games this year where they've scored 5 or 6 runs. That Brian Wu Yankees game is one you've got to win. And then there's been too many of these where they just get blown out uncompetitive games that seems like it's happened a few times. And, now the run differential is down to like plus 13. I'm at the point of really care. We're in the stretch run, just find ways to get W's. But too many games this year where the pitching has let them down. Very Mariners, right? Like if we would have had this year's offense last year, they would have made the playoffs, or last year's pitching this year, probably be in first place. It's very frustrating, to say the least. And again, the offense not good this series either. I don't want to come across that I'm saying that they had a good offensive series. They didn't. But I think overall the pitching has been more disappointing. Doesn't mean you can't add to the offense. There's clear areas to make upgrades for the offense, but I'm still not against adding a pitcher to the back end of the rotation. One thing I will say though, and I'm all for adding a pitcher. The guys you have to be better. Like, you've got to get Kirby stabilized here. Logan Gilbert's got to do more of yesterday. Doesn't have to throw, 7 shutout innings with 10 Ks, no walks every time, but got to find the consistency. And truly, even with the trade deadline, it's the guys on the current roster that are going to have to make the bigger impact here. It's Julio, who did have 2 hits today, but having more of those Detroit series, that's going to go a long way. JP not making errors. JP is going to be the shortstop. right? Like maybe next year, maybe offseason, something happens there. That, but for 2025, I'm like, can't remember what year I'm in. JP Crawford is going to be the Mariners shortstop. He has to be better. That there's no option. You're not playing Dylan Moore. They're not going to acquire a shortstop at the deadline. Like, if anything, it's going to be third base, maybe first, maybe a Dylan Moore replacement. Maybe that guy, maybe in Ahmed Rosario, and he could play some short, but in general, JP is going to be your shortstop. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby are going to be in the rotation. So the current guys have got to find a way to get it done. So let's go ahead and dive into the box score here, and then I will get out of here. Castillo, 5 innings, 10 hits, 6 runs, 3 earned, no walks, 7 Ks. I mean, look at the strikeouts and walks and a pretty good start. Again, I think some BABIP stuff happened to Castillo today, and then the error for sure. But he's also got to be better, no doubt. Trent Thornton, 2 innings, 7 hits in 2 innings. Holy cow, I don't know if I've ever seen that. 4 runs for 4 earned, no walks, 2 Ks. I mean, any chance to come back was kind of let go there. Legumino with a shutout inning and 2 strikeouts. Then Garcia had a shutout inning with 2 walks and a strikeout. So good for Garcia to have his first shutout inning. 2 walks, 12 Ks, but 17 hits. And I think, let's see, how many extra base hits did the Brewers have? 1, 2, 3, 14 singles. Usually an indication some BABIP there. Not an excuse. They've got to be better. So let's go ahead and get into the batting. Only 7 hits today, 2 walks, 9 Ks. And listen, if the Brewers are going to put up 10 runs, you're not going to win a lot of games against them. Truthfully, they're putting up 5 or 6. You're not going to win a lot of games. JP was 0 for 3. Dylan Moore pinched hit 0 for 1. That's fine. Just get him an at-bat there in a blowout. Julio was 2 for 4. I didn't see the 2 hits. I don't know if they were hit hard or not, but we'll take it. Randy was 0 for 3. Mastroboni pinched hit was 0 for 1. Polanco was 1 for 4. Luke Raley 0 for 3 with a walk. That's someone I'd highlight that's got to get going is Luke Raley. It's still a fairly small sample size since he's come back, but Luke has got to start heating up a little bit. Because I think if he does, you don't necessarily need a first baseman at the deadline necessarily. Certainly maybe have someone that could be a better defensive upgrade, or maybe go with Tyler Locklear over Solano, or maybe there is a right-handed first baseman that you like. I think Carlos Santana has been struggling a bit, but I don't know if it's like maybe one side of his platoon has been okay, but whatever. But Luke Raley's got to get going. Because I've kind of hinted that I don't know if you need Josh Naylor and Gino Suarez in a trade, but if Luke's going to stay cool, then, maybe you do. Maybe you do go with it. And then I don't know what you do with Luke Raley, to be honest, but got to get going. Mitch Garver was 1 for 4. Canzone 1 for 4 at the RBI double. Nice day for Ben Williamson, 2 for 2. He had the bloop single, which tied it up in the second. Also had a walk on base 3 times today. Good to see. And then Cole Young 0 for 3 at the bottom of the order. So, I think for the most part, where can the team get better? Let's take the trade deadline, out of this essentially, because we don't know what they're going to acquire. Maybe they do get Gino Suarez. I think you're more likely going to see a Willie Castro and a Med Rosario. We'll dive into all that, once those deals happen, and I'll look at it. And this, like I said, as soon as we see a move, we'll break it down. Consistency from the starting pitching. I would point to mainly George Kirby, Logan Gilbert. Woo's had moments where it's frustrating, but it's hard to look at Woo's overall body of work and be disappointed. Castillo as well, right? Some of the underlying stuff, not as great for Castillo this year, but the guy's put up a 3.30 ERA and has made every start. Gilbert and Kirby have to be more reliable, and they could use someone a little bit more stable in that 5th spot, I think. Not that Logan Evans has been bad. He's done a nice job, but you wouldn't mind having another veteran there that you just trust a little bit more to take the ball, I think. But I think Gilbert and Kirby are the 2 you point to the most in the rotation. Gilbert, good start yesterday. Kirby's shown some signs, but then he has that inning, right, where he just can't get through it. So we'll see. Bullpen-wise, I think you just need another arm down there. I think, Munoz has been a little bit more on the shaky side the last month or so, hasn't quite been as dominant. I think you still trust him, obviously. Brash you trust, Spire you trust. And I think Bizardo, Vargas, who else is down? You're not going to have 10 guys in a bullpen that are just going to be lights out. But I think one more legit arm, whether it's another lefty or a righty, don't really care. But, I've talked about Soto from Baltimore a lot, Finnegan from the Nationals, if he's available. Get guys like that. Finnegan may be a little expensive. I don't know. I don't know how his numbers have been this year either. So, don't quote me on those guys, but guys like that, one more guy I think would be a big boost. To try to shorten the games, get the rotation locked in, get that going. You should be good. Offensively, I think the Dylan Moore role needs an upgrade. Someone that you can trust a little bit more to, pinch hit in those situations. Because I don't mind pinch hitting for Canzone and Rayleigh against lefties, but I'm at the point like just let them take the at bats because the alternatives are so bad. Ramon Laureano, Isaiah kind of Falefa, guys like that make some sense. Again, I'm just throwing names out there. You don't need to come out of those guys. I'm just throwing things out there right now. I'm just talking. Like I said, we're sitting at the bar. I'm just going over what my thoughts would be to improve the offense. But I would say Luke Rayleigh's got to get heated up a little bit here. Need a Luke Rayleigh hot stretch and need Julio to kind of piggyback that Detroit series and doesn't have to do that every series. He'd be winning the MVP, but closer to that. We need a little bit more of that. I think third base is a position where, you can definitely, potentially get a solid upgrade there. I don't think Ben Williamson's been as bad as some people think. I think he's giving you solid defense, and I've talked about it. I think he's kind of stabilized the roster a little bit, allowing Polanco to DH. I mean, if you can get a Gino Suarez, great. Absolutely. I think that's fine. Like I said, I think a guy like Willie Castro makes a lot of sense because he can play all over a little bit. It gives you that kind of versatility, or get creative too. I'm not against that as well. I think you feel pretty good with Canzone right now, the way he swung the bat. Really unfortunate that Dylan Moore has dropped off because that's kind of a big piece for you. And his, I don't know, decline, whatever you want to call it, has really been brutal for this team. But anyways, just my quick thoughts. Again, some of those guys might be having terrible seasons. I watch a lot of baseball. I don't have that's why I said I'm not necessarily the inside knowledge guy. I'm throwing out names that are more just giving an idea of the type of player that they may be targeting. Like you could come back and say, dude, Finnegan has an 80 RA and has more walks and strikeouts. My bad. Like he was good last year. I'm just kind of going off that stuff. Like someone like that then essentially. So, we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. Tough series. Let's see if Boston maybe has come back against Philly or something. Let me see if we've got maybe some good news there. No, Boston's still up. White Sox and Rays are tied. So hopefully the White Sox and Phillies can find a way there. Big road trip coming up for the Mariners. A sneaky one where you could really make some hay. It's also one that it's games we've seen this team struggle. Remember last year going to Anaheim later in the year, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster for this team. So got to find a way here because these are teams you should be beating. The Mariners should be better than the Angels and A's. But they're also teams that are good enough to just get you a little bit. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy what's left of it. Rangers winning too, dang. It would like nice if the A's could get that one. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, go Mariners. Peace.